Veterans Day. I served in the U.S. Army, Military Intelligence Corps from 1989 to 1994. I am very proud of having served, but I do not seek thanks or congratulations, and I'm not asking for them here either. Rather, I was honored just being able to serve in the military for the greatest country to have existed on Earth. A country that respects life and liberty above all else, seeks peace wherever it can, liberates the oppressed, and fights back against the ravages of evil that would destroy our world and subjugate its people. Moreover, I was honored to serve alongside some of the finest men and women I've ever known. But most important to me, the ones that I honor well above my own quiet and safe time in service, are the brave ones that served before me, while I was in, and after my time on the field of battle. This is especially true when I think of my younger brother Chris, who spent 2 years in Afghanistan. On Memorial Day, we honor the fallen. On Veterans Day, I want to revere the bravest among us, those that had to see the hells of war, to kill or be killed, to watch their friends die, suffer the pain and anguish of taking a bullet or shrapnel, and then one day, having to try and forget it all happened so that they might live out a normal life with friends and family. These brave men and women of our revolution, the Civil War, World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Kuwait, Afghanistan, Iraq, and countless other skirmishes and battles deserve our thanks and eternal gratitude. In honor of these brave souls, I thought it fitting to read a short bit from a book, Brave Men, written by Ernie Pyle. He was a war correspondent during World War II who was on the front line with the troops at Sicily, in Italy, at Normandy, and then in France, and eventually in the Pacific. His is a gripping account of the horrors of war and the amazing bravery and courage of the American soldier. I'm reading from a first printing of the book my wife's grandmother gave her husband in 1944 on their first anniversary after he returned from World War II. Pyle writes on the landing at Normandy. After it was over, it seemed to me a pure miracle that we ever took the beach at all. For some of our units it was easy, but in the special sector where I landed, our troops faced such odds that our getting ashore was like my whipping Joe Louis down to a pulp. The men who did it on the beach were men of the 1st and 29th Divisions. I want to tell you what the opening of that second front in that one sector entailed, so that you can know and appreciate and forever be humbly grateful to those both dead and alive who did it for you. Ashore facing us were more enemy troops than we had in our assault waves. The advantages were all theirs, the disadvantages all ours. The Germans were dug into positions they had been working on for months, although they were not entirely complete. A 100-foot bluff, a couple of 100 yards back from the beach, had a great concrete gun in place built right into the hilltop. These opened to the sides instead of to the front, thus making it hard for naval fire from sea to reach them. They could shoot parallel with the shore and cover every foot of it for miles with artillery fire. Then they had hidden machine gun nests on the forward slopes, with crossfire taking in every inch of the beach. These nests were connected by networks of trenches so that the German gunners could move about without exposing themselves. Throughout the length of the beach, running zigzag a couple 100 yards back from the shoreline, was an immense V-shaped ditch, 15 feet deep. Nothing could cross it, not even men on foot, until fills had been made. And in other places, at the far end of the beach, where the ground was flatter, they had great concrete walls. These were blasted by our naval gunfire or by explosives set by hand after we got ashore. Our only exits from the beach were several swales or valleys, each about 100 yards wide. The Germans made the most of the funnel-like traps, sowing them with buried mines. They also contained barbed wire entanglements with mines attached, hidden ditches, and machine gun firing from the slopes. All of this was on the shore. But our men had to go through a maze nearly as deadly before they even got ashore. Underwater obstacles were terrific. Under the water, Germans had whole fields of evil devices to catch our boats. Several days after the landing, we had cleared only channels through them and still could not approach the whole length of the beach with our ships. Even then, some ship or boat would hit one of these mines and be knocked out of commission. The Germans had masses of great six-pronged spiders made of railroad iron and standing shoulder height just beneath the surface of the water for our landing craft to run into. They had huge logs buried in the sand, pointing upward and outward, their tops just below the water. Attached to the logs were mines. In addition to these obstacles, they had floating mines offshore, land mines buried in the sand of the beach, and more mines in checkerboard rows in the tall grass beyond the sand. And the enemy had 4 men on shore for every 3 men we had approaching the shore. And yet, we got on. When the heavy fire stopped, our men were organized by their officers and pushed on inland, circling the gun nests and taking them from the rear. As one officer said, the only way to take a beach is to face it and keep going. It is costly at first, but it's the only way. If the men are pinned down on the beach, dug in and out of action, they might as well not even be there at all. They hold up the waves behind them, and nothing is being gained. Our men were pinned down for a while, but finally they stood up and went through, and so we took that beach and accomplished our landing. In the light of a couple days of retrospection, we sat and talked and called it a miracle that our men even got on at all or were able to stay on. They suffered casualties. And yet, considering the entire beachhead assault, including other units that had a much easier time, our total casualties in driving that wedge into the continent of Europe were remarkably low, only a fraction, in fact, of what our commanders had been prepared to accept. And those units that were so battered and went through such hell pushed on inland without rest, their spirits high, their egoism in victory almost reaching the smart alecky stage. Their tails were up. "We've done it again," they said. They figured that the rest of the army wasn't needed at all, which proves that, while their judgment in this respect was bad, they certainly had the spirit that wins battles and eventually wars. I can only hope that I live a life that replicates, at least in some small part, the example these men set, for these brave men are the finest example of the human spirit. Thank you to my fellow veterans for your example, service, and sacrifice.